Hey, welcome to the Ian Wendt Show. This is episode 1, and I'm super excited because I have a good friend of mine. We're gonna call him Alfredo because, truth be told, we can't really reveal his. I know this sounds like so mysterious, but it's true. And I'm gonna let him introduce himself in a minute, and you'll understand why he can't reveal his identity and voice. But he's really going out on a limb being on the show and especially sharing some of the things that he's about to share with us. So thank you for coming on, bro.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, man.
But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so nothing too crazy. Since about late 2021, I've been involved actively in anti-human trafficking. I have to make sure to emphasize the anti when I'm talking to people, not human trafficking. I'm not complicit. So I've been doing anti-human trafficking operations for about the past 3.5, close to 4 years now. I don't have a crazy background. I did a couple years in the military, got out, and kind of the luck of the draw, or you could say the fate of God, landed me in the position I was able to be in and work with some very high level guys, get trained up by them. And like I said, the past few years, I've been able to work in over a dozen different countries doing anti-human trafficking operations, mostly in Latin America.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, we've known each other for like 2-3 years now, in person. I mean, when we met actually because you had just gotten out of an operation, correct? I think.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that week prior, if I'm not mistaken, or week and a half before, we had conducted a pretty.
Yeah, because we met at I believe it was a fundraiser for the current NGO you were working with or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that's when we met, and we had our mutual friend, who I won't name because I'm almost giving this whole thing away. But yeah, man, obviously you've told me stories over the last few years, and I mean, I've even seen things firsthand with what you guys have been involved in. And we even had an opportunity to work together on some things. And so I think it's really cool that we could talk about just this issue in general. I feel like it's something that is something I've been passionate about and something that I feel like has kind of just faded from the public eye. Like, it was so prevalent. It was so powerful for a while there. And then all of a sudden it just kind of disappeared. And even now, there's the people that are out there like, when are we going to get the Epstein list and everything? But at the same time, it's like, I feel like the actual issue of how incredibly widespread and just powerful the industry of child and human trafficking is, it's not talked about nearly as much as it should be. And that's the main reason why I wanted the very first episode of my podcast to be focused on that alone. Because I think it's super important that we get that information out there. Before we jump into this, though, first things first, I've seen a lot of other podcasts where they give their guests like gifts. And so I wanted to do that for you as well. If you look right there in that bag, there's a few things in there. So you want to pull some stuff out, I'll kind of tell you what it's all about.
Sweet.
Yeah. So first, you got the Patriot hat. That's actually the first hat that we made for my business official Patriot gear.
You can't beat the classic OD.
No, man, the classic OD is the best. So there's that, and then of course the OG Patriot tee. That's just kind of the first T-shirt I ever made. Really kicked everything off with the brand. It all really just started from that one T-shirt. So you got to have that too.
Oh yeah, the staple marks. Look at that.
Yep,
that's awesome.
Yes,
like
sir.
I said, you can't beat OD, man. Whether you were in the military or
you
not.
can't have too many black or OD green T-shirts. So that is this month's mag for the OPG Mag Club. So every single month we do a different mag, and every mag it also has a T-shirt. So I'm actually wearing the T-shirt that comes with it. I don't know if you guys can see the back. I'll show you the back in the light, maybe. But
that's pretty badass.
Yeah, every month we do a mag, a T-shirt, a card, and a sticker. And it has something to do with something that happened that month in our history or like a pop culture thing. So that's next month's mag, and I just thought you might enjoy that.
So
I appreciate that. I think you got Sean Ryan beat with the gummies. Don't kill me, Sean.
Well, dude, I mean, he's giving his guests guns. So
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
true.
I mean, maybe we'll get to a point where I'm able to give guns to people. But yeah, man, I hope you like that stuff. And, I appreciate you coming on the show. So it's the least I could do.
Yeah, no, and thank you for y'all that don't know, without giving too much detail. Patriot Gear, the official Patriot Gear, has helped us with across multiple different NGOs and corporations and organizations, not just raise money but spread awareness also. So we're very indebted to them with their efforts. So thank you much, Ian.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course, this is the least we could do. I love being involved in it. It's being a business owner. One of the coolest things about it is that I'm able to do stuff like that. So
For sure.
that's what it's all about. But all right, let's dive in here. So you've been involved in anti-child trafficking. It's funny because I also get the same thing. Sometimes I'll accidentally say child trafficking. They're like, wait, what?
For sure.
It's like, no, anti-child trafficking. What do you think is the most important thing to know, like right now in this moment when it comes to anti-child trafficking, or just when it comes to the industry of child and human trafficking in general, that most people in the public just don't understand?
That's a pretty loaded question, but I would say generally that it is happening 24/7 all around planet Earth. If you live on this planet, it is happening currently. It doesn't matter if we're here in Idaho. It doesn't matter if you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, Memphis, Tennessee, Dallas, Texas, Tegucigalpa, Nicaragua, where you lived. It's happening everywhere. It's so prevalent, and it's a current issue, and it's been a current issue for decades, and it will continue to be. So a lot of people think that there are epicenters, and don't get me wrong, there's places where it occurs a lot more. But what people don't realize is it's happening with our own children day in and day out.
Yeah. So that's actually the thing that like was the most mind-boggling to me when I really started kind of like getting more involved with helping NGOs and different organizations that were involved in anti-child trafficking. Is it looks a lot different than people think it looks. It doesn't look like someone grabbing a kid out of a car and running away and then them never seeing the kid again. That does happen, but correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of the human and child trafficking actually happens online.
Yes. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. There, unfortunately, there's so many cases here in the States and even in these states that are kind of regarded as safe havens, Idaho, Utah. I've spent a lot of time in Utah, as have you. So many cases are online, right? And to the point where pretty much every federal agency and every local law enforcement agency has had to form something called ICAK. What ICAK stands for is Internet Crimes Against Children. And those are the guys that hunt down these pedophiles online that are soliciting sex to minors. But not only that, they're also, in the trafficking sense, they are telling these minors sometimes they get enough information on them and they leverage it. So they're saying, hey, if you don't send these pictures or these videos of you doing such acts, we're going to come after your family.
They're basically blackmailing the kids.
Exactly.
They're getting them to send pictures or whatever. And then they're saying, we're going to show this to all your friends at school, or we're going to show this to your parents if you don't send more or do more. Correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. That's messed up, man. What, I remember learning about that because we actually had, we showed a pre-screening of a documentary that an organization made a while back. I don't want to name organizations because I'm not sure how that all works or if I'm supposed to do that or not, but we were working with an organization that was involved in that. And they made a documentary about online child trafficking and how it was all about stuff like that, like blackmail over social media, gaming sites, things like that. And we basically did a full pre-screening here in town with as many parents as we could get into the theater. And it was eye-opening, man. It was pretty crazy to see, like, thank heavens my kids are not old enough yet. They're getting there, which is scary as crap. But like, it was pretty wild to watch those police officers and different law enforcement agents talking about how these pedophiles get to the kids and how they groom them and like really get them into these compromising situations, which also unfortunately leads to a lot of child suicides.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
What do you know? I guess, is there any, like, I don't know, what do you know when it comes to that stuff? Like, is that as common as, how much does that happen?
Oh, it happens very often. I couldn't spout off any numbers for you exactly. But what I can tell you is just from,
Have you dealt with it?
First and second hand experience. I haven't dealt with that too much. Now I say that I mostly work out of the country.
Well,
right?
and you're in the field.
Yeah.
Like you're actually doing sting
So
operations and stuff
typically
like that.
my role for the most part entails either, asking for these services for parties, and we can get into that later, or even acting as if I can supply it. So I don't deal a lot with the ICAK stuff, the Internet Crimes Against Children.
That's the
here
back
in
end
the US.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have, thank God in the U.S. we have some really good resources in local and federal departments that handle that very well. I've had family members work in that industry. A lot of good friends work in that, and they have some amazing tools. Now, what I can tell you is it would blow your mind to see if I could show you 100 faces. For example, I have a close family member of mine that recently, within the past 5 years, worked one of these units. And she was like, if you could see 100 of the faces of these people that committed these crimes, that were soliciting these minors for sex, it would blow your 95 of them you wouldn't be able to pick out of a crowd. They're not all the typical looking basement dweller, child molester.
The bald head.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm talking everything from college professors to pastors to bishops, people in high clergy positions in different churches, in educational positions, uncles, grandfathers, fathers.
Why do you think it is that, I know this is kind of a loaded question too, but why do you think it's so prevalent? Like, why do you think so many people of higher positions in churches and family members and stuff, like, why is it such a thing? I mean, because it is. Like, that's what I want people to understand. I think there's a lot of people that are probably listening to this thinking, well, how common is that? Based on everything I know that I've been told, and based on what you're saying, like, it's extremely common. It's the most common.
Yes.
And the only thing I can wrap my head around is it is true influence of evil. Like, whether you believe in God and Satan or not, I do. I believe in God. I believe that there is an evil and that there is a good, and I believe God is good, and I believe Satan is evil. And I believe that Satan, his ultimate goal is to take away the ability for God's children to make choices. I think that his ultimate goal isn't just to get the children of God to sin or, all these other things. I think it's ultimately to get us to not only choose to not be able to make a choice, but to put others in a position where they are not able to make a choice. In essence, to take away their free agency and the ability for them to progress, because you can't progress without making choices, right? And the only thing I can think of is that, once you get to a place where you are so hungry for control, right? Like, that's the only thing I can figure is that it's about control. It's not so much about the actual, like, pleasure. It's so much more about the control of the situation. And these people are just hell-bent on control. I don't know. Does that make sense? Is that, like, based on what you've experienced, what do you think it is?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I mean, there's no logical explanation, that's for sure. There's nothing that I could be like, oh, this makes sense.
To us anyway.
Yeah, to us.
Right?
To you and me, we're just, it's one of those things where I'm like, it doesn't even make sense. It's like, yeah, it's wild, man.
Yeah. So, that God complex might play a role, right? And maybe it has something to do, and I'm just spitballing here, right? Because I couldn't give you a definitive answer, and I'm not a psychologist, but maybe part of along the same lines of why cartels do what they do, sometimes to their own people, sometimes the enemies, like, it's just to assert power, right? Everyone's different. Some people are just so sick, I can't literally understand it. Yeah. And we can get into some stories there where some of the traffickers that we've, detained have also been trafficked.
Oh, for sure.
It's a cycle where some of these people that are doing what they're doing have been abused in one way or another. It's not an excuse, but it has somehow neurologically rewired them to do what they're doing.
Yeah. So let's actually dive into that. Let's talk about the stories. Because I know you have a lot. I mean, you've told me some of them, but I know there's even some that you can say that, even recent ones probably. What I really want ultimately is, I don't want to scare people, and I don't want to make this all about like, hey, you're listening to the darkest thing that you could possibly listen to right now. But at the same time, I think people need to understand the darkness of it in order to actually understand how important it is to get involved and to try and help the situation and prevent this thing from happening anymore. Yeah. And also hold our leadership accountable to making sure that it doesn't happen, right? And I think it'll also shed light on the fact that, you know, again, this isn't all about the Epstein case or whatever, but it's like, bro, the freaking biggest, most prolific pedophile in modern history, we still don't know who his clients were. We still have no idea who thousands and thousands of people were trafficked to.
Thank you.
It's wild, dude. It's freaking insane. And I know that this is like beating a dead horse, but this horse needs to be beat until there's nothing left, because it's insane that we don't know the answer to that. So yeah, like my ultimate goal, I guess, is not to, it's not to like scare people or like make it super dark. But at the same time, like I said, I really want them to be able to understand the depths of this issue. And I think the only way to understand that is by people who have actually been directly involved in it, telling them the stories that they would probably never hear. So if you're willing to do that, that's where I think we go next. What is it that these people need to know and hear about that, you know, that would change their perspective and that even probably changed yours?
Oh shoot, that's a hard one to pin one down specifically. You know, as you know, we've talked for years, and I have dozens of stories from different operations, and they all look so different, right?
Right.
No one story is the same. Some are similar, but they're all drastically different. There's a couple though that stand out to me that I'll never forget, that I'll take to the grave. And one of those, I'll start with one, that opened my eyes to the gravity of human trafficking, right? Because I think by this point, it's 2025, we got the half-assed freaking Epstein files, whatever the fuck that is.
And I get so ridiculed for that, because anytime I criticize this administration, you know, these days we live in a place where you can't support and criticize the administration. And it's like, what Orwellian world do we live in? Like, you absolutely can, and you should. I'm not a loyalist, dude. I've said this a million times. Like, if you only ever support a leader or an administration or anything like an elected official, you're not a patriot. You're a loyalist. The loyalists never question. The patriots always question, because at the end of the day, it's about holding these people accountable to your principles and your values and the principles and the values that this country was built on. As soon as they walk outside of that, that's when you criticize them. And something like gamifying human trafficking and giving it to these freaking influencers who, quite frankly, look, I don't know all of them personally, but like, what are they doing? And by the way, I'm not even excluding myself from that. I would not want that binder. It's like a freaking, to me, that was it was a landmine, dude. Yeah. I would never want that responsibility, because quite frankly, I don't deserve that responsibility. Like, and I'm saying this from a place where, you know, I have gotten involved in this, and I have donated money, and I have donated lots of time, and I've traveled to different places to help with disasters, and I've tried my best to not just be the person that's talking. A lot of these people are literally just the people that talk. And it's, to me, it's like, why in anybody's mind do they deserve to have that responsibility and that spotlight, quite frankly, even though this should never be something about a spotlight, right? Yeah. And again, for all the people that are listening and saying, oh, he's just jealous. No, I don't want it, and I don't feel like I deserve that either. That's not something that, the way it should have been done is they should have done a press conference and said, here's all the information. That's it, period, right? If you have files on your desk that you're talking about, and they're horrific, as you said, Pam Bondi, and if you have a truck full of files like you said you just got, then freaking dump the truck out and unload everything off your desk.
Let us be the judges.
Yeah. Don't gamify it. Don't make it some kind of game. Like, this isn't a game. And this is, I'm all fired up now. This is the main reason I wanted to have you on, bro.
Yeah.
This is the main reason why I wanted to talk about this, because it has to be understood that this is not something that is a game. And the fact that we still don't know the thousands. By the way, people will say hundreds. No, it's thousands. This was going on for decades. Thousands of people, important positions, government, business, Hollywood, everything you can think of, were involved in this. And it's like you said, they're the people that are the 95 faces that you would never pull out, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that you would look at a thing and never imagine that they're involved, and they are. And it's crazy to me, dude, because anytime you mention that, you know, there's the small group that are like, yeah, what about this? But then the rest are just like, it's never going to happen. Let's just give up on it. And I'm just like, dude, this is crazy. It's crazy we've gotten to a point where people are willing to just give up on something like this. Right? I don't care if it's a national security threat, bro. Like, freaking get those files out there now.
It's who's it a threat to besides the offenders themselves?
Exactly.
Who's it a threat to besides the offenders themselves? All have ties.
Yeah.
Every single motherfucker on that list has a tie to a special interest organization.
That's right.
So and to piggyback off that real quick, if you don't mind, before I get into some stories.
Yeah.
I have worked with a few different organizations, as you know, and you know those organizations.
Yes, I do.
You've been able to meet them.
Yep.
And, you know, all well intended. And we have reached out to both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, talking about the U.S., right?
Yeah.
And if the Biden administration answered our call and said, come to the White House tomorrow, let's talk about it, we would go.
Yeah.
We wouldn't give a damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with 99% of their ideologies, but we don't give a damn when it comes to children's lives. Who cares?
Yeah.
I will work with whoever. You know, it's funny. We went and met with the president of Honduras, and forgive me, her name just escaped my mind. This was a couple years ago. Very socialist, extremely socialist.
Honduras? Oh, yeah.
But she goes, you know what?
It doesn't matter.
What's happening at the border.
I remember you telling me about this, actually. Yeah.
Like all these kids, we have, I can't remember what the figure was they threw at us. I want to say it might have been a 6-figure they were throwing at us for all these missing of their own country kids at the border, at the U.S. border.
Yeah.
She's like, I want to go up there tomorrow.
Yep.
I want to meet with the Biden administration. I want to meet them on the border and figure out what our kids, I don't care about like that. I'm a socialist and anything.
Because it doesn't have anything to do, like, the fact that you're socialist has nothing to do with the fact that kids are being trafficked for sex.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
we have a hard time figuring that out here, though, in the U.S.
Oh, I know.
because everything is politicized, even kids, which is insane.
Yeah. And even, you know, obviously me and you are kind of both more conservative leaning, but even on the conservative side of the aisle, it's like, how can we politicize this?
And it's used.
And it's used and abused, and it's super
It's
sad.
disgusting.
So just saying that, like, we have worked, once again, I'm going to reiterate this. We have worked with multiple governments all over the world. I've mainly worked in Latin America that have completely different ideologies, completely different political agendas, but they recognize this problem. And you know why it is? And I know we've talked about this in the past. It's because Latin Americans, at least, I can speak for them. I come from Latino descent. My family's, you know, Mexican, as you know.
Well, your name is Alfredo.
Yeah, Alfredo. Soy bien mexicano. La raza. But we value family.
And for those of you guys who don't know, I also speak Spanish because I served a religious mission in Nicaragua. And so that's why I'm fluent in Spanish. And he's not wrong. Like, the family is so huge in Latin America. It's so important. It's why, I mean, it's why all the families live together, dude. Like, you go there, that's the reality, man. The tío y la tía, like they
build on top of each other.
Yeah, man. Like, everybody lives together, and it's actually really cool. It's one of the reasons why I love those people so much. It's one of the things that I fell so in love with when it comes to the culture and the people in Nicaragua. Like, they just love each other so hard, and families are so tight and they're so strong. And like, everybody's got their problems. You know, that country's obviously got a ton of issues, but like, at the end of the day, I think the reason why they're some of the most humble and some of the most happy people, even though they have next to nothing compared to us, they got their families, you know, like, that's ultimately what it came down to. Is the coolest experiences I had was when we were able to be with an entire family and just see how tight they were and how much they loved each other and how much they looked after each other. And like, Yeah. I mean, the family is center to everything. And I think the United States has forgotten that. I mean, I know it's forgotten that, right? And if it hasn't forgotten that in a lot of ways, it's also been politicized. Everything's been politicized, right? Now, if you're a family man, you're freaking toxic masculinity and you're who knows what. And like
you're fascist.
Yeah, you're a fascist because you want to have it's just crazy, dude. It's nuts. But anyway, I apologize, cut you off.
No, that's perfect. I really wanted to iterate that point. Yeah. You know, and I know me and you, like I said, we've talked about it a dozen times before. Yeah. Like it was so eye-opening. I did a tour with some people and an organization a couple years ago when a big movie came out, The Sound of Freedom, right?
Yep. And, I didn't know you were going to go into that. Can we go into that?
Yeah, we can go a little bit into that.
Right.
So
I didn't know that.
I tailed them, and that was something very eye-opening, right? Yeah, so I had tailed these guys around on the Sound of Freedom tour. And that was something that really stood out to me. Is just, you know, I obviously grew up Latino, a very close, tight-knit family, but just seeing that no matter where we went, no matter the current status of the government, they were so willing to help us in this mission. Very God-fearing people. So yeah, I just really wanted to, you know, kind of hit on that, because I think a lot of people think that just because we're the world leaders here in the USA, that everyone follows suit and that everyone else is woke. No, not everyone else is woke.
Yeah.
Like Latin America is the least woke place ever. Now I get you have your exceptions, right? Of
course.
But that's the exceptions are the ones they push out in the media, and it's the very small percentage, just like anybody else. The majority of Latin America has very strong family values. They are very God-fearing, very Christian. Like, dude, it's not even close. And that's why sometimes to me, it's like, this is going to go off on kind of a tangent, but like even with the border, right? Like everybody says, well, they're using Latin Americans to get votes. It's funny to me because I think that there's definitely probably some truth to that. But at the same time, I'm also like, or the Latin Americans are just being really smart and using the Democrats, making them think they're going to get the votes, and then getting into the country and saying, hell no, we ain't voting for these guys. Like, we're going to vote for freaking Trump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, any Latin American I've met is like super pro-Trump and all about it, right?
Yeah.
Like most of them, there's no way they would vote for Democrats. Like they just, I think that they can see it, especially when you talk to like Venezuelans or people from Argentina. Like, dude, they can see right through the BS, right? They've lived it. I have a friend that he's from Venezuela. He was born in Venezuela, and we were talking, actually, this was I think it was about a year ago, 2 years ago. And it was funny because we were on a bus at an event for First Form, actually. We were at one of the First Form events, and I was talking to somebody on the bus just about the current situation with the border and like how the country was moving towards socialism, and it was so prevalent and so apparent and everything. This was literally 2 years ago. And it was really interesting because, you know, the person that I was sitting next to was like, that I was talking to was like really engaged and everything, but you could tell that they were still kind of like, is that really what's going on? And it's funny because the guy from Venezuela was sitting right next to me, and he goes, by the way, everything he's saying is true. He's like, I'm from Venezuela. Everything he is saying is exactly what is happening in the United States of America. And that is why people like us are trying to be so vocal about it and trying to get people to understand what's going on, because this is exactly what happened in Venezuela. He's like, I watched the whole thing take place. So anyway, I don't know how we got on that tangent, but it's just like understanding that Latin America is so far removed from the politics of it, and understanding that they're so God-fearing and so family-oriented, it helps to understand why there's so much support, correct me if I'm wrong, especially from what I've seen and what I've experienced, even just through you, like, you know, for the issue of anti-child trafficking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and the Cubans are the same, and even the Mexicans, you know, I still have family in Mexico.
Yeah.
And in 3 different states in Mexico, and the caravans, it kills them. They hate to see those caravans come up, and they know what goes on in those caravans.
Yeah.
And we like to be the oblivious ones because our media just feeds us a bunch of horse shit. Yep. But you know, we can get into that too later. But no, I guess one of the stories I kind of had on my mind that I wanted to share of the gravity of.
This is the one that like really you can't, you were saying you can't forget. Like,
yeah, I'll never forget this moment. And not because it was graphic or brutal necessarily, but because we always hear about human trafficking going up to the highest levels of the government, up to corporations, right?
Yeah.
And you hear about it, and a lot of us believe it, especially now, like 2025, and a lot of things developing. We're like, okay, we're starting to see through all the BS. We're like, okay, this is actually real. This isn't a conspiracy.
Right.
But, rewind a few years, and a lot of these things, it's just easy to dismiss as, okay, well, that's a theory. That's a theory. That's crazy. We get it. There's some bad people that are high up. Yeah, we want to throw this crazy stuff like Epstein's Island and stuff on them. But I was in Mexico with a few other operatives. And mind you, these guys combined. So I was with 4 other operators besides myself. Between these 4 guys, they had over 100 years in undercover operations, investigations experience. I mean, cream of the crop. They'd worked with federal agencies, U.S. Marshals, HSI, local departments, the whole 9 yards. Badass dudes, had seen every scenario you could throw at them.
Because you said that we can talk about Sound of Freedom, can I just say something real quick?
Yes.
Okay. Because you're being humble when you say that you don't have a lot of experience or whatever, like you don't have as much experience. But the truth is, the reason why you do have a lot of experience and the reason why you are someone who has the credibility to speak on these things is because you were closely involved with the same organizations that were involved in the move in the story that the Sound of Freedom was about. And I want everybody to know that, because that's like the most popular story, quote unquote, that people are actually aware of now when it comes to child trafficking. And we can talk about this in a minute about how it just kind of faded from the public eye, right?
Yes.
But like, you've worked with the best of the best, and you've worked with the people who are not just giving money to organizations to go in. You were the boots on the ground that were going in there with the money that was given to you from the organizations that aren't actually going boots on the ground. I want everybody to understand that, because it is like, I know you're trying to be humble because that's who you are, but like at the end of the day, you do have the experience and you have actually been in the fight, and you've been in the fight with some of the best of the best. And so I want everybody to understand that, because it holds a lot more weight. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm glad you said we could talk about the Sound of Freedom, because I wasn't going to mention that. I didn't know that was, but this is the guy, one of the guys that like very, very closely tied to everything you know about the Sound of Freedom. So,
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I'm still very grateful, I guess, to work with these guys, because at the end of the day, they do shadow me for sure. I'm in their shadows, and I've learned so much for them. So, so we're all together, and ironically, we were there. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline and what operation, because I've been down in Mexico so many times, but we're in Cancun, Mexico. I can tell you that. And funny enough, we are at this hotel that is a very chill, it's a higher end hotel. Pilots stay there, and sometimes the crew and just people that are typically there for business or like shorter trips, because it's a very expensive hotel. It's not all inclusive. You got to pay for every drink. You got to pay for every meal, and it's a pretty penny. So we would stay there to lie low after we would infiltrate other places, right? Because there's not really any nefarious activity, I should say, going on there typically. So we're hanging out one day. We're at the beach bar grabbing a bite to eat. I'm eating a club sandwich, and we see this older guy. He's got to be in his probably young 60s, right? And he's walking down the beach with this gal that doesn't look a day over 16. So of course our antennas go up. We're like, lock on. So we grab him a drink. We start shooting the shit with him.
Like, so you approached him.
Yeah. Yes.
How does that, okay, how does that work? Walk me through that. Walk the listener through that. Like, I think that's really interesting, because you don't know him from Adam.
Yeah.
But you know that he's probably involved in something nefarious. What is the process of getting him to sit down and get drinks from the point where you see him on the beach and you're just at the bar to getting him to come to the bar and get drinks? Like, explain, what does that process look like?
So in this occasion, because he was an older guy, I had a couple dudes with us, and one of them was closer to his age, not quite, but like, mid 50s. So he could approach him. So we're like, hey, so-and-so, you go approach him. Bo, we'll call him Bo.
Because I would imagine that if he's involved in something like that, he's trying not to be noticed.
So here's the fun part.
Right?
Yeah. So they're not. So it's all about making them comfortable. Just like I would assume, I haven't done a broad array of undercover work, mostly anti-trafficking, right? But I would assume, and from the stories I've heard, it's mostly the same in most undercover work. You go up, you make them comfortable, you have common grounds, you kind of talk their language.
Undercover work.
Yeah, exactly. So our guy Bo goes up to him, and that's his undercover name. I'm not giving you his real name. So Bo goes up to him. He's getting a cocktail at the bar, and Bo goes, "Hey, where are you from?" They look about the same age. They start kind of shooting the shit. Gets him, a cocktail. He's like, "Hey, let me get you a drink. You and your beautiful girl." So Bo starts using some of the same language because Bo has been doing undercover work for 30 years, mind you.
Yep.
So he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get you a cocktail, you and your girl cocktail." And he starts kind of,
playing to his ego.
Yeah, exactly. Stroking his ego. And he's like, "Hey, where do you get a beautiful young girl like this, man? You're like, you're not near her age," kind of, starts giving him some jabs, joking around, and just loosens the guy up. The guy doesn't spill all the beans yet, right? So you don't want to be like over enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And asking too many questions. So he kind of loosens it up, gets him a cocktail or two, and then removes himself from the situation. We know he's there. We got eyes on. I removed myself from the group personally. I was one of the younger guys. And then so I followed him up to his room, just did a kind of a little pass by to see what room he checked in. That way I have that data. Well, we let the rest of the night play out because we're like, hey, this guy's staying here. He's going to be here for a couple days. He's probably going to come to the hot tub, right? The typical patterns.
Yep.
Wine and dine, hot tub, sex in the room for the second, third time that day, whatever. Comes down to the hot tub. Our guy goes up to him, starts talking to him again. "Hey, we already met." Dabs him up. "Hey, got another drink?" We're all smoking cigars. And here's the funny part. Our guy, obviously undercover cop for 30 years, he starts talking to this guy and he's like, "Hey, I'm really interested where you got this girl. Like me and my guys would like some of the same meat." And so he gets him to loosen up. The other gentleman asks him, he's like, well, who are you? Kind of. He starts kind of playing, and this is typical, right? They want to see you. They want to make sure you're not a fed or something.
Yep.
And here's the funny part. My guy played his cover as himself. He's like, "Hey, look, I'm a retired cop, but I'm a fucking perv. And I love young Chotch." Right?
Yep.
And so this dude opens up. I have to be careful what I say from here.
Does that happen a lot where you guys or undercover agents actually just like kind of hide in plain sight?
A decent amount of time, right? Okay. Because part of, and I'm not giving away any secrets by any means. You can see this anywhere on the internet. A big part of undercover work is trying to not lie as much as you can.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds.
And it's because it's so much easier to get caught in lies if there's so many of them. Because you forget. It's like a freaking maze. You forget where you went with something.
100%.
Interesting. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So pretty much everyone's on the same page. Use a similar name, like if not your first name, right? Use a name that you have gone by or that's very familiar with you. Something you're familiar with, right? Because you don't want to be like, "Hey, I work in this industry," and they work in the same industry. Like, I don't know who the fuck you are.
Yeah.
Yep. So anywho, he goes right in. He's just like, "Yeah, look at, I'm a retired cop. Like, you can trust me, man." Because who better to trust than a retired cop? So this guy just vomits, right? This guy just vomits.
People
He's
are
like,
so
cool.
stupid, man.
And I wish. So I believe the investigation, the big investigation is still going on taking down this exact spot where he purchased this minor.
Yep.
So I can't say too much, but long story short, he gave all the information to my guy. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so, I'm from Orlando. And I'm an executive for a very big media production company. Fill in the blanks. Huh.
Does it deal with a lot of kids?
Deals with a lot of kids.
Interesting. And has like its tentacles in basically everything else.
And
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The founder might be frozen somewhere. There's a
Should we go to that conspiracy? Jeez, dude, that's crazy. And he told you all that?
so
See,
yeah,
this
he
is the
tells
kind of
us all
stuff that
this.
makes me realize like the stuff that James O'Keefe does, right?
Yeah.
You know James O'Keefe.
Yeah.
It was Project Veritas, and now it's what's it called? Starts with an O. What is his new thing called?
OMG.
OMG, yeah.
something.
I actually got to meet James.
Media.
He's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah.
Loves his DJing. I'll tell you what. I think I just saw he was DJing at like Ultra or something. Anyway, but this makes total sense why he's able to do the things he does, because people are so stupid. They'll just spill it all. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But you can't say any more, I imagine, because the operation's still going on.
Yeah, I can't get into details on like I said, like where he got
That
the
doesn't
girl
surprise
and
me
this,
at
that,
all,
the
though.
other.
Like, if you guys are filling in the blanks of who the organization is, it doesn't surprise me at all.
I will say this though, and I would love to be able to update you at some time. So I really need to dig into this. When you find out who was running this operation out of this place,
Like who's actually
who's running the place
Yeah,
where you go
yeah,
and
yeah.
purchase these minors? I mean, it's just disgusting. Let's just say some high level people, some other high level people that are very trustworthy people. And so,
crazy.
long story short, I'm trying to.
Is that really the first time that you just realized, like, oh, all this stuff that they say about conspiracies and like, let's just throw it out there. I know people will, as soon as I say this, be like, what? But Pizzagate, right? Like all that stuff. That's kind of broken the internet recently and come back.
Yeah.
Super weird, right? And of course, I don't know if you've seen, but there's also been a few more deaths, weird suicides. But
Suicides, yeah.
with that, it's like, was this kind of the first time that you realized, like, oh, there might be some truth to some of that stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like-
This was. I never doubted it necessarily, but to see it with
see it
your
firsthand
own two eyes and
listen-
hear it
and
with your
hear
own
somebody.
2 ears,
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell? And let's just say that Sound of Freedom was able to hit the theaters for a reason. I'm just gonna say that. People can fill in the blanks, right?
Yep.
Information travels. Sound of Freedom got released.
Yeah, but see, it's so interesting. Can we go into Sound of Freedom real quick?
Yes, please. Yes.
Because, it's funny how Sound of Freedom was easily what I believe, the biggest splash when it came to quote unquote waking people up about the issue of child trafficking and human trafficking in America and in the world. Like the amount of attention that movie got right off the bat and just soared through the box office. And all of a sudden now it was the main conversation. It's funny, dude, because that is one of the only things I have ever seen both sides almost simultaneously attack relentlessly until it just kind of faded from the public. Like I don't even know how long it took, but it was the most important topic. And then all of a sudden it was like one day it was just gone. And I know that a lot of it had to do with allegations against Tim and, Tim, the one the story's about, and all the stuff that happened there. But like at the end of the day, it was just so weird to me. And it's funny because I got really so I actually know Tim. Like I've known Tim for a while, and there's been multiple times where I've like defended him online and stuff. And like, truth be told, I don't know everything there is to know about the cases. I have no idea. Right. So I'm just going off of what I know, and I've met him and I know who he is. And like, my whole thing is it will always be the same: innocent until proven guilty. Right. Like that's the reason why we have the court of law, and but anyway, that we'll get into that maybe later, maybe not. But point is, how everything just kind of disappeared and how the attention on this issue just kind of went away. And then all of a sudden how people like Tim are being attacked in the courts and everything else. And it just completely destroyed like what's the word I'm looking for? The legitimacy.
Credibility.
And the credibility, right, of the situation. Like, I heard people saying that there was no such thing as that operation. And it's like, I know, I know some of the people that were involved in that operation. So it's insane for anybody to say that it wasn't real or that it didn't happen. Like, I've seen videos, like actual video footage from the legit operation. You know what I mean? You probably have too. And so it's like, it's just crazy, man. Like, what's your thought on that? Why was it so fast that it just disappeared? And why are both sides attacking it at the same time?
Money.
Right?
Money folds people. Money folds and money folds people. You know, it's, I wish I could chalk it up to something more like deeper or values. I've battled with this for the past couple of years, right? Because I've had people that are close to me in my life, family, friends, who be it, that know I'm involved in that mission, right? In general, not necessarily a specific mission, but
Just anti-child trafficking.
Anti-trafficking, right?
Yeah.
And question legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I luckily for me, I'm a pretty even keel guy, kind of water under the bridge type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I'm just like, you're ignorant. But every once in a while I get a little spooled up.
Yeah.
And,
imagine.
you know, I'm like, yeah, no, it's not, you know, illegitimate. It's very real. Those operations are very real. And I've personally been on some operations that not necessarily in the big media spotlight, but I've been on other operations that have been called false, right? Saying, hey, they didn't do this. The government didn't agree. Like people trying to frame us ultimately. And we have documents with hundreds of victims' names.
Right.
That's another thing
Exactly.
that drives me nuts is anytime I've read about these cases and it's like the people from the outside that are attacking these anti-child traffickers are saying, well, where are the victims? Why don't we have the victims' names? Why don't we know about any of the people that they rescued? It's like, you morons. What do you mean, why don't you know about them? How in what world would it make sense to reveal the identity of the people who have been trafficked for years, kids especially, who are now in aftercare?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Let me give you a quick little perspective on how sensitive these sort of
Yeah,
operations
please do.
are.
yeah,
If we have UCs, so undercovers, right? UCs that are working the case,
yeah.
they will never come in contact ever again with the victims.
I've heard that.
So in dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of victims' eyes, I am a bad person. My alias is this piece of shit who was going to rape them for 12 hours straight. You know, imagine you being, and it's really hard to imagine, right? If you're not in the situation, but imagine being from the time you're 5 years old to 15, let's just say a decade, you're raped, you're extorted, you're sold multiple times on the day to whoever for how many years, and then to go, hey, that's actually the person that saved you. It fucks with you mentally.
That's the one that sold me into that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how sensitive is. We separate. Well, aftercare comes in, we go away in handcuffs.
Yep.
We're the bad guys to them.
Yeah.
So yeah. So even bringing the victims into questioning is so. What's the word? Like
Ignorant.
Ignorant.
It's just
And there's
ignorance.
another word. It's escaping my mind, but it's just it's not even plausible, right? These people have already been through so much. They've already lost their life, and we can get into this later. But that's why, like, I'm very much in agreement of why the death sentence for pedophiles, for human traffickers, is that's the easy way out.
I think that the freaking pedophiles, I think we should be doing brazen bull in the county,
100%.
in the freaking town square, and it should be pay-per-view for the whole world.
Yeah.
Like, I think people like that, it's, you know, I don't believe that any of us are the judges, right?
Yep.
It's funny, I can't remember who it was. Somebody said, Oh, wasn't it the guy that just who was the guy that was in prison just now and he killed a pedophile in prison? And when they asked him about it or whatever, they said like, "Who are you to
I saw
judge?"
that
He said,
clip.
"I'm not." He said, "I'm not the one to judge. I'm just the one that set up the meeting."
Yeah.
I
Or
saw
something
that
like
clip.
that.
I
Like,
saw that
dude,
clip. That was
how
awesome.
badass is that? I was like,
That
that's
was
sick.
awesome.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like these people, I don't believe that these people have a soul. I mean, I think that they're completely and totally overtaken by evil to be able to do something like that. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I think that that's something that people need to understand from the outside. It's like, why would you ever think that they would release the victims' names? Like, it doesn't make sense because of the reason you said, but it also just doesn't make sense in general. Like, why would you want to parade these people around in the public? I correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also one of the reasons why it's taken so long for some of these other cases with the victims coming forward and like trying to keep them as, you know, as anonymous as possible or whatever. And it's just, I don't know. It made sense to me, but for some reason it doesn't quite click with others.
Yeah, no, it's really difficult because you don't realize you're making them relive a spiritual death, an emotional death.
Wow.
Right.
That's actually, I never even thought about it.
And so that's why I say it's worse than taking a human life. It is worse. If I walked in here and shot you in the head, you're dead.
Yeah.
That's it. You go to wherever you believe, you know, as LDS, you know, spirit, paradise, spirit, prison, purgatory, if you're Catholic, whatever it is, you're released of your earthly pain. When you are raped as a child, you carry that the rest of your life. And that carries into everything that ingrains itself in your fibers. It becomes part of your identity. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of the times, it becomes part of your identity. And extremely unfortunately, a lot of these traffickers have been raped themselves.
I
They've
don't
been
doubt
a
that
victim.
at all. Yeah.
And they know nothing else. I'm not justifying it. But it's almost like the person that did that to them is honestly culpable of a spiritual genocide.
That's
My
crazy.
opinion.
I never thought about it that way. A spiritual genocide. That's wild.
Yeah.
So tell me this, like, because you were talking about how you are the one, I mean, ultimately in these situations, you're the one that's basically like selling these kids, right? Like knowing what you know and seeing what you've seen, how do you put yourself in a place, how do you get to a place where you're able to fake that? How do you get to a place where you're able to actually legitimately sell kids to the point where people believe it?
So I would say most of the time for me personally, everyone has different capacities. I have been in the position before where I have, you know, talked about selling it and working out deals.
But you're, okay, so you're mostly the purchaser.
Typically I'm a purchaser.
Like,
Exactly.
how
No,
in the
same,
world
same
do you-
mentality. Same
Same
mentality.
thing.
Whether you're selling or purchasing, it's the same thing. So how do you get to that place?
It is, you know, that's a great question because I've had a lot of people ask me this. I chalk it up to this. People, there's certain people that have a switch in life that can differentiate reality from the fake and from an alias, and other people can't. I have had buddies from special operations come with us on these operations that go home early. They're like, dude, I can kick in a door all day and whack a bunch of Al-Qaeda. I cannot speak like this. I cannot hear this language. I cannot see these children and just not want to just rip my freaking shirt off and kill someone, you know? So and don't get me wrong, it's difficult because sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm, you know, I'm at a 5-star dinner in wherever in Mexico on the beach, and I have a steak knife eating a, you know, $200 ribeye or whatever it is, and I'm like, I could drive this through your fucking neck, and we could just be done with this. And you know, it's hard, but you have to lock in, and like I said, there's just this switch. I honestly can't explain it.
Well, and so let's try to like pry it up, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
where do you think that switch comes from? Past experiences in the military or in your life in general, or like, where do you feel like the ability to turn that switch comes from? Do you almost feel like you have to have, I guess it's a 2-part question. Do you feel like it comes from the past? You know, because I mean, when you're talking about why people act the way they do in life, so much of it has to do with our past experiences, right? We create these, like, I've talked about this multiple times, but you create these, or you have these anchors in your life, these, whether they're really good experiences or really bad experiences. If you were to like think of the top 5 most impactful or, you know, I guess influential experiences in your life, you think the top 5 just right off the bat, more than likely they're going to be traumatic and they're going to be awful experiences. And that has caused you to carry around a way of seeing the world that most people don't, right? It's these anchors, and it basically creates this like lens that we have, right? And that's for everybody. And I wonder, my first question, I guess, is, do you think that that's part of why you're able to turn that switch? Like, are there experiences in your life that you could think of right now, as I said that you're like, oh yeah, that's why I'm able to do this where other people can't? Or is it just this idea, or is it a combo of it, of just being able to like almost create an alternate personality? Like, do you feel like you have to kind of like split away? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because I think it's probably a mixture of both those things. You know, I grew up in a loving home with both parents, very devout Christians, and I mean, we always had a roof over our head, food in our mouths, just well taken care of. Our parents loved me and my siblings. I mean, they're the best parents in my opinion, right? But I grew up also with my father. Let's see, we got 3 generations of law enforcement and military in my family, right? Starting from my grandparents down. Military wise, we go back like 7 generations, I should say. That being said, I was used to growing up in an environment and learning about alternate lifestyles. My father was gangs for a while. My uncle was gangs. They had different names. They rode motorcycles. Like,
a lot of why people see the world the way they do is obviously because of experiences that they have in their life. And so I would imagine that because of the fact that you're 3 generations of undercover, you know, I'm sure you've heard stories or seen things that have probably made it possible for you to be able to flip that switch that most people can't and become somebody that you're not.
yeah, absolutely. So growing up like that definitely has an effect on you. And it wasn't a negative effect growing up as a child. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, scared or anything, but my dad explained it to us in a very simple way. Hey, this is what I do. I have a different name so the bad guys don't know us. And so it was, for me and my cousins, it was just, oh, okay, that makes sense. Same thing for him. When his dad was a diplomat, he was involved in some cases that were extremely high level. So that never, that part of the job came naturally. Now, seeing certain things and not letting them affect you. There's a book called On Killing. And we're not necessarily talking about killing, but it does go into the psychology. It's Lieutenant David Grossman.
It's like you said, though. I think it is killing. I mean, like you said, like you're either killing a human or you're killing their spirit, which is almost worse.
100%.
I mean, it is worse.
I believe so.
You're turning them into a walking, just vacant body for the rest of their lives. I mean,
yeah, no, it's very sad. So genetically something plays into it, to say the least, without going too deep into it. There are genetics involved. Some family, you know, limbs of the family tree are just able to do that work. You know, my family and many of us are
involved. It would also be, you know, I think it might be a weird way to look at it, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's also probably certain people are given gifts, I believe, right? And like at the end of the day, I think that could also be, as long as it's used for the right reason, which obviously you have used it for the right reason, I think that could be seen as a gift. I mean, I think that, I believe that we choose, this is going to go really deep, but I believe that we choose the life that we are leading right now. And I believe we chose who we were going to be and what we were going to do in life. And that's ultimately why I believe so much in like doing your best to progress and become the person that you're supposed to become in God's eyes. And so I would say that, you know, you probably chose that. You probably said, hey, I can do this. Like with that kind of gift, I'll do the right thing. And I believe that's, you know, people might call me crazy for that, but I think the spiritual gifts are meant for a reason and meant for certain people. And, you know, I would say that having 3 generations in your family, including yourself, that are able to do the work that you do, that's so, so, so important, but also so hard. You need to have those gifts to be able to do it.
Yes. No, absolutely. It's just, once again, and there's no, I don't judge anyone that isn't cut out for it, right? Like I said, we've had people come on operations that were great law enforcement officers, that were great special operators, and it just wasn't their cup of tea.
Yeah.
Because it is so hard to stomach. And a lot of people, and I know we kind of touched on this earlier, a lot of people are like, why can't we just kill them? Like that would make life easier, honestly. We're all on the same page there. I don't think any of us disagree.
Yeah.
We would love to just exterminate these people because I think it would help push it really rapidly to cease to exist. Every once in a while, and this is going to get a little graphic, but sometimes, and I'm thinking of a specific operation, we locked up a bunch of guys, and I can go into this, and a couple gals. And it would be surprising.
Go into it. Like, here's the thing. I'm not trying to like traumatize people, but at the same time, they have to hear the dark and real, circumstances and real like parts of this work. I feel like to actually understand the gravity
100%
of this evil. You know what? That's what Sound of Freedom did. It made people uncomfortable, and I think that that's important.
And they did an amazing job. Just by the way, shout out to Angel Studios, right? They did such a good job.
So I saw it. Most people don't know this, but I saw it like 4 years before it actually came out. I saw it at a pre-screening in Vegas with Caviezel, and it was really, really cool. But
awesome.
I literally watched it 3 times in a row. That's how good it was. I remember the first time I watched that movie, I was like, I don't really cry in movies, dude. Like I can count on one hand how many times I was like snot sobbing on the first time I saw that movie, because I was thinking as a father, we had just had Miles, and like it was so crazy to see that and think, what if this was my kid? I got so emotional, and I literally watched that movie 3 times in the same day, because it was so powerful, and I wanted to feel that, and I wanted to experience it so that I could take it with me and really like embrace, the idea of keeping my kids protected. And just, I remember thinking that the part with the guy, the big dude in the bedroom where he gives him the sandwich and stuff, and with Teddy, right? I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. Like I remember thinking this can go south fast. And they did a good job of making it very, very uncomfortable, but not too graphic where people just would walk out.
Yeah. Right.
But like I said, and again, I'm not trying to be the graphic, like make this nasty kind of thing, but like at the end of the day, I think that is needed sometimes.
So funny you mentioned that. Like I said, I kind of tagged along for some screenings there for a while when the movie officially hit theaters, and I would never watch it. I still to this day have not seen. There's like because now I've seen so many screenings that there's about like a 12-minute gap that I haven't seen in the movie. But forgive me if I even get choked up right now. There was a part, and I don't even have kids. I have nieces and nephews, and that's enough for me. Just to get really worked up over this stuff. But I can't remember which part it was exactly. One of the parts with the little girl though. And it reminded me so much of an operation I went on that I had to walk out during one of the screenings. I couldn't stomach it. I was just like, I've seen this. I've seen that look on that little girl. I've seen that exact look of despair on a little girl, and that kind of brings us back to what we were talking about earlier. Like anyone that thinks this is a charade or over exaggerated is out of their fucking mind. Because I'll tell you what, it's not. And you tell that to any of the victims, goodness gracious. So, and if you don't mind, I'll go into that story that I'm thinking about specifically.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
We had and this will kind of tie into what I was saying a few minutes ago about like people being like, don't you wish you could just whack these dudes and dudes and girls? You'd be surprised too, which we can talk about how many girls are involved, but it would make life easy, but we'll get to that in a second. I won't disclose the exact location in Honduras, but it was Honduras, which every country has a huge problem. Honduras is no exception, to say the least. They have a very big problem with human trafficking. being there in Central America, it's the corridor, right?
Yeah.
North to south, just
Right.
so many people get trafficked. Like I told you, their presidenta, I can't remember her last name. Was it Castillo? I can't remember. I don't want to butcher it. Anyway, she was very on board to help us because it's such a big problem there. So we executed this operation after about a couple months of gathering intel and stuff. And we organized a big get together, right? And we had some of the main traffickers in this area bring their inventory. And it ended up being somewhere between 35 and 40 people total, which of those 35 to 40, I want to say somewhere around 30 were under 20, and then 20 something were minors. So, kind of a half and half. It was nuts. It was a lot to keep up with. And there ended up being like 9 traffickers that showed up because everyone wants a piece of the pie, right? But the main trafficker, I remember this son of a bitch. Like I could point you out to him right now if you showed me. I don't know if he's alive though, and we'll get to that in a second. And I hope he's not. But I mean, they were just hurting. And I at this point, I had already seen this a dozen times on different operations, but this one was a little bigger with how many bodies showed up. And they were just hurting these women like cattle. And it was nuts. I mean, literally like cattle. I worked on a farm when I was a kid, right? And, we did what we had to do to get
they even brand the kids, don't they? Don't they brand the kids? Don't some of them brand the kids?
Yeah, no, literally. Literally, we'll brand them, mark them, tattoo them, all sort of things. So they're moving them around. They're yelling at them. They're hitting them. And I guess what I'm getting to with that exact instance, that and this is another one of those that this memory is engraved in my mind till the grave. Like I can remember this chick's face. This poor little girl, I think we ended up finding out that she was 12 years old, right? And she was sitting on the couch. And mind you, we get them in there, we get everyone feeling comfortable, kind of, pouring cocktails, laying back, getting everyone chilled out, counting the money. There's certain things, and I won't talk about all the tactics, but there's certain things we have to do that have to be documented before we can carry out the assault, the takedown, and arrest them and have.
Yeah, you have to have the proof of, makes sense.
We're doing that part of the thing. And we try to do it as quick as possible so that we're not wasting time. And the SWAT team's down the road. And this poor girl, and she was just this tiny little thing, shaking, just convulsing. Like you would have thought we were in Antarctica. We're in Honduras in the summer. It's like fucking 100 degrees with 75% humidity. It's not cold at all, right? And she's just chattering. And this pimp comes up to her, this trafficker, and, freaking slaps her on the knee and tells her in Spanish. He's like, ponte bien. Like, get with it, You're about to get raped by all these guys. Mind you, there's a bunch of us full-grown dudes standing around. And they bring in a box of, it's a little graphic, but they bring in a box of like 100 condoms, a couple hundred condoms. And, this girl just doesn't know what the rest of her day is going to look like. She thinks she's getting raped probably a dozen times the rest of that day, at least, by all these guys as a little 12-year-old. And it's not her first time there. I'll tell you that. It's not her first time there. And I remember talking to her, and obviously I can't break cover, but I'm talking to her. I'm like, hey, you need do you want me to get you a snack?
And at this point, you're one of the ones buying.
Yeah, I'm one of the ones buying. Right. And so I'm like, you toe that line of like, I'm not going to obviously be an aggressor,
right,
but I can't be too nice.
Right.
And so I remember that just engraved in my mind.
Did you feel like, I have an interesting question. When you do that, did you do that on purpose, or did you almost break cover because you felt that way? Like, is that normal? Is that normal for someone who is about to buy the kids to offer them food or a drink or whatever, or did you almost like break cover?
Oh, no, that's super normal.
That's super normal.
So, so many of these pervs, and I've been in the room a couple times with these pervs that didn't know that we weren't pervs. So that happens sometimes on operations where you get some other guys to come with you and party, quote unquote, but they're actual pervs and you're not. And, same thing. It's like, oh, well, I'm nice to them, and
they're acting like
I tip them well. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Some of these people justify it. They're like, well, they're going back to their family with $300. Like they can't even make that in a month. Like, you just raped them. It doesn't matter what you give them. 300,000. It doesn't matter what you give them. So, I've never come close to breaking character necessarily, but just seeing her, I mean, it was like, and I've seen so many different women and minors in general just very nervous in those situations, but for some reason that one just stood out to me because there was so much going on. It was so chaotic. There's so many people dispersed throughout the house, but watching her just shake in her own skin was very sad. Now I will say the trafficker, the main trafficker, total turd. He was just, like I said, he was running them. So every trafficker is a turd, don't get me wrong. But some are worse than others when it comes to just the way they treat them, right? And this guy just did not care. I mean, property, to say the least. Like, just, like I said, slapping them around, telling them to shut the fuck down.
They're not human. I mean, they're not humans.
They're not
human,
human,
these guys,
they're
but
not human.
especially...
You're going to suck so-and-so's dingling and do this for so-and-so and just like that. And it was nuts. And so when the SWAT team came up, we were in a second-story house, and you're familiar with Latin America, so they'll build them on stilts and then 2 stories. So really, we're way up, right? Yeah. And the SWAT team's got to come up not one flight of stairs, but like what would realistically
like 3 or 4 to get to the top. Yep.
So I'm like, shit, I don't want anyone to escape, right? Because there's only so many of us. There's about 9 traffickers and a bunch of victims. We want to keep them all rounded up for questioning and all that. And so we had told them, hey, our head guy is coming, our big boss, the one that's paying the bill, the one that's paying the tab for this. So it's his birthday, so we want to surprise him. So everyone, we're going to turn off the lights and go to the side out of the view of the windows so that we can surprise the big boss. And this guy just wanted to look through the window. He wanted to look through the window. He wanted to look through the window. And so the SWAT team's coming up the stairs, and I shoved him to the side, just elbowed him. I'm like, bro, you can't see. Like, this is the big boss interest. Like he'll see you through the window and he'll get pissed at us. Like, this is a big surprise. And I remember the SWAT team kicking in the door, and it hits me. It hits me. And this guy's face went from, because he just made, I don't know how much money, right? Let's just call it 12 grand. So this door gets kicked off the hinges, hits me in the chest. I almost fall down. I hit the wall. And then a Galil, which is a type of automatic rifle, gets just shoved right in his chest. And to watch this dude, just the blood go out of his face, because they transported him to a certain prison that the day before had 46 fatal stabbings and the rest of those traffickers. So what I'm looping back to when I say that is, that was one of the few times I was like, you are about to go get what you deserve, more than I could ever give to you. And it's going to be so painful. And you're going to die there. Yep. Probably sooner than later. Yep.
And that was one of the times where you're just like, that's justice, sir.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. That's freaking nuts. I can't imagine. So do you feel like those are kind of the situations that allow you, going back to what we were talking about with like how you can just kind of flip that switch and put yourself in these situations and not give yourself up? Is it because of that, like experiences like that girl, or do you have other experiences that just make it so that you think of that when you're in the situation again and you're just like, I can't break character because of little girls like that? Yeah. Like, do you see her face now when you do more operations?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's one of the multiple faces I see for sure.
And do you feel like you need that? Is that kind of what people that do what you do need? Do you need that almost? I don't want to say it's inspiration, but like you need those experiences to be able to really, like you said, like lock in and be like, okay, I'm doing this for her.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Everyone's different, but I do feel like something in common with all the guys I've had the fortune of working with. They do have at least a few different stories in their career that stand out like that, where it's like, yeah, they remember someone's name, someone's face. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that's one of those for me. And like I said, for many other people, they have their fees, whether it's from their time at a local agency or a federal agency or overseas, they have their kind of pinnacle moment or their moment. They're like,
Have you ever been able to act? I mean, I know we talked about a little bit about the victims and how the victims never really meet people like you or whatever, but have you ever actually had the experience or the opportunity to meet one of the people you've saved by pretending to traffic them? Like, have you ever had that experience?
Not one of the people that I've been on the operation that saved them. None of them, but other traffic victims. I've had the opportunity. There's been a couple rare times where I've been in the country when aftercare came in, and was doing their thing, and I kind of tagged along with them.
Is it kind of like what they show on because in The Sound of Freedom, like they show the kids dancing and singing and everything, right? And that's the whole thing of like, that's the sound of freedom.
Yes.
I would imagine that and I don't know how, I've heard mixed things about that scene. I've heard that it might be completely true. And I've heard also that it's like, it was a little bit like theatrical to make the movie more impactful or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I just wonder, like, what's that really like? I can't imagine the kids singing and dancing after being rescued, after being in the situation they've been in. I can only imagine that you were basically rescuing at that point lifeless bodies.
Yeah.
And I can't even fathom what they're thinking. Like I would imagine that they're just so confused and so scared that they don't know what to believe. Their reality has been completely blurred. I don't know. Like, can you speak to that at all?
So in my personal experience, I've never had the fortune of experiencing that, right? Every time I've been on an operation that was successful and we had a takedown and rescues,
you're always the one.
I'm cuffed. I'm getting shackled and thrown against the van, or having a gun pointed at my head. So I necessarily haven't seen that. I definitely have seen the children, shortly after alleviated and smiling. I know I've talked to a couple guys that were on that specific operation that you're talking about, that the Sound of Freedom was based off of.
Yep.
And that actually was pretty accurate.
Really?
Right? Like, the kids were playing around, and it's all it's all very situational. I think maybe the fact that was like on this secluded island and all the feds showed up, and the way it went down, maybe they recognized, oh my gosh, we're free. Right? And so it depends on how it gets carried out, for sure.
Right.
Because sometimes it's just so swift and violent, and just like there's no room to be able to see anyone, talk to anyone. You're just in and out.
How is it always, I mean, I'm sure it's different, but like, how long does it usually take leading up to that final like buying situation? You know what I mean? Like, how much time is invested into getting in with those guys before you actually take them down?
So case to case.
Yeah.
Very case to case. You have, and there's many ways to go about it. Sometimes you get tip-offs from local law enforcement that are like, hey, we have these complaints, we have these cases. We can't necessarily dig too deep into them because we're nationals here, and nationals, they know the nationals in that said country don't have the means to buy, for human trafficking. Right. So that's when Americans come in and play their part. And sometimes those cases, I mean, hell, second you receive it from locals to a takedown could be a couple weeks. Sometimes it's months, sometimes years. We had a case that we wrapped up last year in Mexico that, I think they started it back in, I don't even know, it was, I want to say before 2020, if not 2020. So it went on for years, right? Almost half a decade. And it was a big case. It was a big case. This lady was abusing a lot of children, and kind of went cold case. Some intel got spilled, XYZ, just a lot of the times in these countries, they're so corrupt, as you know. Nicaragua, it's no different. Everyone has their fingers in the government and is paying them off. It's so hard. You have to vet thoroughly who can we work with. And it takes a long time to figure that out. So we've had cases go on for, like I said, years until we get a takedown.
Right.
So very, very dependent.
Interesting. Let's talk about, because I know you have a little bit of information about this too, or you have a little bit of experience, I guess. Let's talk about the border. There's been a lot of, I mean, look, I always try to really get to the truth, and I understand there's nuance in everything, right? Yeah. Like, I know that what I've learned over the last, especially couple years, is that it is so easy to actually spin a legit like conspiracy theory. And the reason I know this because I've been in situations where people have done it, like West North Carolina, for example, right? I was down there, and I remember after like the second day of being there, all this crazy stuff started coming online. I won't mention exactly what it was because I don't want to, it doesn't matter, but there were different things that popped up online that I was like, yeah, that's total. No, I'll give you one example. One example was the idea that they were like purposely destroying the supplies at these like camps that were set up to get supplies for people that were trapped up in the mountains or whatever. There was this one instance where somebody came in with a helicopter and just like blew everything out of the way, just destroyed all the supplies on the ground. And obviously it didn't take the internet long to basically say like, oh, the government is destroying all the supplies that are supposed to go to people. No, dude, it was just an idiot who came in way too hot and destroyed everything on the ground. Like that's all it really was. And I knew that because I was there, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is like the last 2 years, I've actually kind of stepped back a little bit and said like, I know that there's nuance to everything, right? And there actually are legit like conspiracy theories. But at the same time, a lot of that stuff is also true, and there's a lot of truth in it. And so I'm curious because for the longest time we heard that the Biden administration was basically helping traffickers. And at the end of the day, like a lot of people were wondering whether or not the administration was involved at one point because of how much damage was being done with the border being wide open and how many of those people were coming in and how bad the trafficking situation got. I remember talking to Tim actually about this, Tim Ballard, and like he straight up said like, dude, they're making it worse. Like they're just the policy alone is making it easier for these human traffickers to do what they do. And honestly, to do it with the biggest client, which is the United States of America. So I'm just curious, like, I know you've been involved in some of the operations with that as well. In your opinion, how much truth is there to that? Like, or I guess like, what is the real truth to that? Like, do you believe that that's what was happening? Are there signs that say that is what was happening?
I got to see with my own two eyes how complicit the U.S. government is. And I think it's Tim that says, he has some quote like, the biggest trafficking organization in the U.S. is, I'm going to forget the acronym, but it's not CBP, obviously, but whatever ICE, it's part of ICE that like transports the people.
Interesting.
Right. And I forget the freaking acronym. It's going to bug me now. But anywho, he's like, they're the biggest accomplices in this. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of crazy. Now, a little background on myself. I lived on the border for 2 years as an LDS missionary, Rio Grande Valley. And even as a missionary, I got to see some crazy shit.
Oh, dude, you know what's funny is I didn't even realize I was seeing it at the time. I don't know if this is the same as you. Yeah. Well, you probably did because you've had, family members in undercover and stuff. But like, I remember when I first started learning and getting more involved in anti-child trafficking and like really understanding and going into some of these organizations and like learning how things are done and how things happen and everything. I remember thinking back to the time that I was in my mission, bro, there were so many times where we legitimately were like at a honeypot. Like we would walk into a house and 10, 16-year-old girls would come down the stairs and we're teaching the parents, right? And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Oh, they just have a huge family. Like maybe those are cousins and sisters and aunts because that's how people live down there. But thinking back and looking back now, there were so many times where I was like, holy crap, dude. I was sitting in a house where I guarantee you they were trafficking all those kids. And there were even situations where I look back and I'm like, I for sure met a trafficker. Like this guy, I remember this one guy, dude, he had a huge mansion. And I remember him saying, oh, I just have a really big family. And there were so many kids in that mansion, like tons. And I just remember as a naive missionary, I just remember thinking, I was 21 years old. I was like, oh, yeah, wow, it's a huge family. Like, but looking back now, I'm like, dude, this guy was totally running a massive human trafficking operation out of that house. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why he was so friendly to us, because he was so friendly. He did not want us to get any kind of idea that that's what was going on, because he knew how close the church was to all these other like organizations and things like that. I guarantee you he was just like trying his hardest to make sure we were friends. And it was kind of like a keep your friends and keep your enemies closer thing. And dude, it was crazy because he would have us over for dinner and like, again, as 21-year-old missionaries, we're like, oh, sick, dude, we get actual food, not just beans and rice today or not freaking cold soup. Like, we're stoked about it, right? Thinking back, I'm just like, that's exactly what was going on. This guy was trafficking people out of his freaking house. And it was huge operation.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, so I mean, right under your nose, totally. Right? But, you know, going back to the border, like, I remember, you know, actually one of the most eye-opening experiences for me in my whole entire life was as a missionary, as an LDS missionary. We refer to people as investigators. Because they're investigating the people that we're teaching, they're investigating the church. Yep. So the first guy actually that I ever taught on my mission, I remember we were literally just maybe a kilometer, at most a mile off of the actual Rio Grande River, right? And we came across this guy one day, and I'm sure, as you know, or the same experience in Nicaragua, like a lot of these dudes that are trying to leave the gang life, the cartel life, they see God.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're trying to get a way out, and then they're like, God's the ultimate way. So long story short, we start teaching them. And, you know, over a period of about 3-4 weeks, every time we showed up, you know, a few times or 2 times a week, he would have a new injury. And he wasn't completely transparent about it. Oh, yeah, I fell and broke this. And I'm like, okay, well, my family's in law enforcement. I know this guy was gang member, cartel. Like he's getting beat, right?
Yeah.
They're giving him his warning, what they call warning lickings, or for a lack of better term. Pretty much, they'll kind of give you some warnings when you try to get out. Like, hey, we still own you, and then if you don't either respond to them or join back, or at least have a contingency and a debt to pay, they'll just kill you. And that's exactly what happened to this guy, right in front of my eyes. Right in front of my eyes. I mean, the cartel literally came across in vehicles, unmarked vehicles from Mexico. Some actually had Mexican plates. It was the craziest thing ever. And I was so ignorant and young and dumb and just, you know how it is when you're a missionary. You're like, I got the power of God on my side. I pull up, I'm like, hey,
I'm protected.
We're here to teach so-and-so. And you're going to get out of my way. We have an appointment with them to teach them about Jesus Christ. And they're like, hey, motherfucker, you get on your little pedal bike and pedal your ass around the neighborhood.
Yep.
I was like, no, we're teaching them. They're like, get the fuck on your bike and get around the neighborhood. And they started brandishing weapons, right? They all had like 1911s in their freaking waistbands and everything. And anywho, they whacked this guy right there. And they went right across the border right after. I'm like, what? Like, how was it that easy? And then as my mission went on, that was the first few weeks of my mission. As my mission went on, I saw people coming. I literally, with my own 2 eyes, across the Rio Grande. Because if you're familiar with the Rio Grande Valley, it is so open. It is so open. At least before this administration or this second time.
That's where the majority of the people come from, though.
Yeah.
It's there's some crazy number. It's like 90% or something.
Don't they call it something now, though? Isn't it something? It doesn't have a crazy name.
Maybe. I don't know if it's that passage, but it's all the way from like Del Rio.
Yeah.
I'm right, or Piedras.
Yes.
All
And
the way
it's
to
like the
Brown
most
Tamoros.
dangerous one or whatever because of all the traffickers and everything else. Yeah.
I mean, it's cartel ridden.
Yep.
And even on the Texas side, it's Mexico, man. You're speaking Spanish there, and it's insane. It's a whole, as we say in Mexican Spanish, es otro pedo. You know, it's a whole nother level.
Yep.
So that opened my eyes. Now, fast forward to me working in anti-trafficking. We had the opportunity, me and a couple other gentlemen, to go down to the border with the well-renowned Sheriff Lamb. You know, God bless him. He did so much for that area and just bringing attention to the problem on the border. And here's the funny part. Pinal County, sorry, I'm probably saying that wrong. Sounds like penis, but Pinal County, it's not even the county. I don't even believe the county touches the border. Right. It's actually a county or two off the border. Right. And I mean, you would think that his department, that sheriff's department, pretty much has a border patrol within it. And so we went down there, and he posted us up with the sheriff or one of his deputies. And he's like, I give you guys 15 minutes tops. I'm like, no way. He's like, 15 minutes tops before you have 2 vehicles coming through here loaded. I mean, loaded to the brim, full of illegals. Kid you not, minute 12 comes by, 2 F-150s go flying by. Packed. 15 people in each F-150. 15, 1-5.
So 30
right?
total.
Cartel members,
So
just a little bit of everything.
a little bit of everything, right? And this is the interesting part because people are like, so many good people are coming through the border. Yeah.
Which, hey, let's be honest. We know that there's like, dude, when I talk about my quote unquote stance on the border, I believe that we should absolutely give the opportunity for anyone outside of this country to have the ability to come to this country and experience what it's like to be an American, to pursue the American dream, to just be an American, right? Like I think everybody, but you have to have a procedure. You have to have a system they go through, and you have to make sure that they do that procedure. You have to make sure that they actually go through that system. Just like, you know, this is beating a dead horse, but it's the same exact freaking thing. Just like if you have a fence around your house, you don't just let everybody in your backyard, right?
Exactly.
It's the exact same situation. But I also absolutely believe that people should have the ability to come here if they do it the right way. And I know that there are a lot of good people. Like I think back of some of the people in Nicaragua who would have killed to come to this country, right? Like not really, but just in general, like and they were great people, and they absolutely should have the opportunity. But you got to go through the proper system.
100%.
You know.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I want to ask you a question. And then we'll kind of get back to what I was explaining. So I like your fence theory, right? You have a fence. Let's say you're having a barbecue, and 20 people show up. You don't know these 20 people. They seem friendly. You want to invite them, have some carne asada, whatever, you know, tacos al pastor, and some chelas. But now I tell you, hey, out of these 20 people, 19 of them, or actually, you know, all 20 of them, they owe this gang down the street a debt. And if they can't pay that debt, they're going to come into your backyard and make sure that debt gets paid.
The gang members are? Yeah.
Yeah. Would you let them into your backyard?
No, I
With your
don't care how
family?
good they are. No. And that's actually a really good, that's a good perspective. I don't think a lot of people consider is the fact that a lot of these people that are coming in here are not gang members, but they're tied to the gang members. They're tied to the mafia. Yeah. And that's actually a great perspective. I don't think a lot of people probably consider that. But yeah, that's true. I would definitely not let them in.
To that point, they're bringing that debt with them. And I don't necessarily come from a third world. I wasn't born in Mexico, even though I come from Mexican roots. I wasn't born in Mexico, so I can't speak to it. I have cousins that were. But that being said, right, you do anything to get out of there. Yeah. Now you're putting your life in danger. And you know, we can get into the whole separating the families, the borders, this, that, the other. A lot of them aren't even with their families.
Yeah.
They have a number and you call the number, and you know, you've heard that. I know Tim Ballard speaks a lot about that. And it's true because I got to watch it. I can get deep into the weeds on this, but I just want to speak to what I've seen with my own 2 eyes. 30, right? We had 30 pass us in these 2 vehicles. We pull them over. 15 of them bail. There's only what of us, like 5 of us, so we're only able to apprehend so many at a time. We can't apprehend 30, and they're just taking off into the
half of them are gone
into the Sonoran Desert. And so half of them are gone. We apprehend the other half, and we're talking to them, and they're from all these different countries. And I know what questions to ask to see kind of who's from where and what they do and what they're about. And I shit you not, out of the 15 I was talking to, there was about maybe 7 that were there legitimately just to seek a better life. Yeah. The other 8, they were all gang members. I could tell. I could see tattoos on their wrists, on their fingers, on their chest. And then, you know, I asked them a series of questions that they answered a certain way. And I was like, bingo. You don't travel from this or that or the other, that community, and you don't lie about this, that, the other without being related to certain gangs back in that country. And then a couple of the younger girls I knew had been raped in that caravan on the way up just because of the way they responded to certain questions. And so everyone likes to make this argument, like we just talked about, of so many of them are good people. Yes, they are. But guess what we're allowing? Guess what we're facilitating to happen to those good people because of the fucking lie we sell them when they come up here? It's a fucking lie, and we're complicit. The U.S. is complicit. We say, hey, come here. We'll open our gates and come live whatever socialist life you want. We'll pay for all your shit. But we don't talk about, hey, you have to pay the cartels to come up. You have a 5-figure debt on your head. It's usually well into the teens of thousands, right? If not way above that. Mm-hmm. They'll threaten or kill your family back home in the country you came from if you don't pay it. You're going to get raped your way up. You're going to get exploited. And then you get to the States, you're going to work your ass off just to pay the cartel. We're not facilitating this safe, come into our country, flood our country, and we'll take care of you. And then not to mention all the turds that are squeezing in with that too. And people are really funny. They're like, well, 90% of them are good people. Well, guess what? Even if 99% are good people,
they're coming,
and 1% is coming in that are gang members, and we have, let's take the Biden administration numbers, 6 figures coming in a month. We have over 10,000, which we're in Rexburg, right? Well, let's just say Rexburg's 30,000.
Yeah,
right, for the sake of numbers. You have a third, if not a quarter, of the city of Rexburg coming in, bare minimum, every month with criminal records. And I'm not talking about shoplifting.
We're talking about murder.
I'm talking about exactly. Extortion, like the worst.
And here's the other thing too. We like to talk about how, this is probably going to be a pretty controversial take, but like, you guys need to understand something too. Most people have not lived in a third world country. And so you don't understand the way these people live. And while I believe that everybody should have the opportunity to go through a system that qualifies them to be able to live in America, at the same time, you guys also have to understand that like the quality and the standard of life in a third world country compared to here is drastically different. And there are people that I can genuinely say you would never want to come from Nicaragua to America.
100%.
Not because necessarily they're bad people, but just because their idea of how to live life in our terms and in our society and the way we view people is bad. They don't think it's bad because that's all they're used to, right? They're used to beating people up in the street. They're used to whatever it may be. But like, you just have to understand that there is a stark contrast of the style of life in these countries compared to the style of life that we have here. And it's just straight up a point of like, you don't want that style of life in America. And that shouldn't be seen as like a racist statement, right? It's just a matter of there's a certain standard that we live here compared to these other countries that just don't have that standard. And they don't think that it's wrong, right?
100%.
Like what we think is wrong, most of those people do not think is wrong because it's all they know. And that's why it's so hard, this conversation and this controversial topic of like, who do you let in and who do you not? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's looking at the simple facts. And I find it funny to kind of going off on a tangent, but I find it funny when, like gringos, for example, start moving into places in different countries and they're like, oh, gentrification. And then, well, what do you call it when we have countries at a time pretty much move into our country look at the UK, for example. How's that going?
Not good.
But your practices and where you grew up, it's going to be so different for all of us. I don't go to other countries and expect them to speak English. Right. And so I'll make my best effort in French or whatever freaking, Catalonian, whatever it is. And, they may laugh at me, but I'm going to go to that country and I'm going to try to abide by their customs as respectfully as possible.
And I think that's what I'm getting at is, as much as we want people to do that, what I'm getting at is that some people in these third world countries wouldn't even be able to if we wanted them.
No,
it's
absolutely
so far outside of their quality, not even quality. It's so far outside of their perception of life and the way that they live that they wouldn't even be able to if we wanted them to. And again, I know that some people are saying, "Oh, that sounds racist." No, it's not. It's just a fact. It's just a fact that when I think back to some of the people that I met in Nicaragua, there is no way in hell that they would be able to live in America and live at the standard of America. I think it brings up the question of like, okay, so obviously the answer to the question of whether or not you think the Biden administration was complicit in all this is yes.
And let me clear that up real quick. it's not just my opinion.
It's a lot.
Go
of
look at
people's
the fucking
Yeah,
numbers.
exactly.
Go look at the. I don't care what you think about Trump. I obviously have some criticizing points of this administration to this point. Go look at the numbers. And one thing I wanted to touch on real quick before we move on. And I know I've seen a lot of Tim Ballard's videos, and he talks about this, and it's really funny. There was some clip, or maybe it was multiple clips, but he brought this up about Kamala Harris talking about how, hey, we seized all these people at the port of entry.
I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And that's the funny part when people argue like securing the border, putting a wall doesn't work. And we're not saying the wall's 100% foolproof. But here's the thing. Now, some people slip through the cracks, but your probability of catching trafficking at the port of entry is so much higher because you have made it so they have to go through there.
Yep.
It's not racist. Yes. If anything, it's anti-racist. It's ensuring the safety of every individual that comes.
Most people can't. No, I wouldn't say most people. A lot of people can't see it that way. But again, it's also because it's been so politicized. Human trafficking, anti-child trafficking, all this stuff. Even the cartels and the mafia and all this craziness that we let in our country for the last 4 years has been politicized, and it's insane because it's not something that should ever. It should not be a political statement to say that we want to keep our backyard safe. And that we want to make sure that the people who come in this country are not going to do us harm or bring others into the country that could do us harm. Like it's just such a weird, it's just such a ridiculous thing that we have to deal with. I guess my other question would be, because obviously I think things are much better now. Also the Border Patrol Instagram
makes me wake up
Dude,
every day.
It's so funny. It's so good. But like, have you seen, can you speak to any like real difference that you've seen being involved in everything and like even knowing people like Sheriff Lamb, like let's talk about the upside. Like what's the light of the situation? Everything's not so dark. Let's talk about the positives. What have you seen as far as an improvement when it comes to the border just in this last like few months?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I haven't, worked the border personally since the new administration,
but a lot of people.
I know a lot of people who are actively working it, and night and day difference. Really? Night and day difference. And it's not the fact that the numbers are way less of people crossing now, right? What people don't realize is the authority, just the pure authority that Trump demands, whether you like him or not. That speaks volumes. Like countries make policies off of who's in office. I don't think a lot of people realize it unless you travel around.
Correct.
You've had the opportunity to travel around. Countries literally make policies depending on who we have in office. So when we have a figure like Trump, just his mere presence, I mean, look at El Salvador.
It's the big stick idea, dude. We haven't carried the big stick in a long time. And say what you want about Trump. Like I said, I have my criticisms of Trump too, but like, that's ultimately one of the reasons why I voted for him, because I just see the fact that his presence alone and the fact that America finally has some balls again, like the countries can see that. And whether or not the media wants to spin it one way or another, like the truth is these countries see the strength of America.
Yeah, we're masculine.
Make America masculine again.
Exactly. So yeah, in talking with my buddies, I got this one buddy that I actually served with that's HSI. And dude, he's always texting me. He's like, bro, we just did this and that, the other. And, just to clear the air, because people are like, I see all these dumb posts of know your right, like, Ocasio-Cortez, know your rights. Here's how you evade ICE. Here's that, this, that, the other.
Yeah.
Okay. Guess what? Little, kind of sneak peek here. I have cousins and family that necessarily don't have all their stuff worked out, and they're still here. Because guess what? They're not criminal turds. Yeah. Now, all these MFs that you're seeing getting arrested at construction sites, no knock warrants, whatever, they're all A-list turds.
Yeah.
And they're getting where they should be sent. So it's nice because now CBP, a couple of my buddies that I have that are Border Patrol, they're like, dude, we're starting to feel like we can actually do our job. The depression rate and the suicide rate and like the I don't know if quitting rate is the right term, but the amount of guys that were leaving CBP during the Biden administration was astronomical.
Simply because their hands were tied.
Oh yeah. I remember I got to sit in on a hearing where this CBP, I don't know if he was a lieutenant or captain or what his rank was, but he was higher up in the CBP. I worked the Arizona, some sector in Arizona. I can't remember which sector, but his wife came into this hearing, and this is on Capitol Hill. and she was talking about the effects it was having on all the officers. She was a president of the Wife's Association or Union or whatever of CBP for that sector. And, just hearing her talk, I was like, damn, these guys feel desperate, because this is during the Biden administration, obviously. Like, these guys they can't do their job. And, she had spoken about a couple guys.
And they know how bad.
They all knew how bad it was.
And just imagine that, like, law enforcement in general, so criticized already. Like, just imagine,
right?
You you're letting criminals into your country where you're
There's
sending
nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Insane.
It's crazy.
Insane.
So, I want to wrap things up. Before we do, the last thing I want to talk about is, like, we talk about the problems, we talk about the issues, but, let's talk about some of the solutions. I mean, especially when it comes to, like, anti-child trafficking, right? Because I think people watching this probably, as they were hearing some of the stories, maybe they feel a little bit helpless, like, well, what can we really do, right? What are some of the things that people can do to help to not only spread more awareness, but maybe even help prevent some of this stuff, or just, like, I don't know, just signs? Like, I know some of those things. I've been taught some of those things, obviously, but what advice would you give people that are watching this that are just like, it's such an evil and awful and huge problem? How do we really have any kind of impact on it?
Just like anything, it starts in the home. It starts in the home. Educating your children, educating yourself.
How? What do you
I would say mostly, especially for U.S. citizens and citizens of the world. But the internet's so prevalent now.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure you educate your kids on the internet.
Because we're not getting away from it.
No, you're not. And I'm not a parent yet, but I am an uncle, and I have, a dozen nieces and nephews or so. And it's funny because I'll just say this: one of my siblings hasn't seen as much of the world as me and the other sibling have, because my other sibling, she's worked in law enforcement. She's worked in actually the same line of work as I have. And, she has some safeguards on her children, but I'm like, hey, you need to just be upfront with your children. You don't have to be overly graphic, but you just need to talk about pornography with your children and the dangers of pornography and what pornography looks like. And those sort of things, because that's where it starts, honestly. That's where it starts, and it's in the home. So if you're able to educate your children on the signs of grooming, on pornography, sexually educate your children. And you as the parent, you will know when the right time is to do that. That's not up to the schools. And then on that note too, get loud in your school districts, get loud with your city council. If you see things that are unfit or inappropriate or policies, that's where it all starts. And then it goes up to the city level, and then it goes up to the county level, and then it goes up to the state level, and then that's when it goes national. Too many people, we just wait around and vote for the next president. So where I live, it's very red. And you might see this too in your community. So many people are like, we'll just vote for the president and the governor.
We'll just vote red and it's fine.
And not doing, enough research. And we have a lot of bastards that are wolves in sheep's clothing. And they're passing policies that are pro-pedophile, that are pro, this, that, the
What
other.
are some of those policies? Like, because I think that's one thing, right? Like, parents could look for. Because I think that's one of the problems is people don't even know what policies to look for and be like, oh, that's what the obvious ones, like transgender stuff and things like that.
I know where I'm from, bills are being passed by conservatives, and they're giving some leeway on pedophiles registering every 10 years. If you act good, then your name's off the registry. You're not a human for the rest of your life and after. You're not a fucking human. So, getting involved in that. But like I said, nuclear, the family, educating your children, explaining to them the signs. And there's so many free educational materials online now that you can look up. So many good organizations put out good courses on how to identify human trafficking.
Do you have one specific you could suggest?
That specifically, no. Honestly, I have seen so much stuff. There's so much good education out there. Even I'm gonna mess up the 3-letter agency. I think it's DHS. Has some good videos, and I could be wrong. I think it's Homeland Security has some really good videos on just identifying. Yeah.
Okay.
Just identifying human trafficking
Start there.
and the signs of it. But mostly speaking with your children, like we were just talking about, pornography, grooming, what grooming looks like, because children aren't going to know that. And you don't have to scare them. But hey, look, if your soccer coach gets too comfortable, if they start trying to offer you rides and say that dad said it was okay, or that you can stay late after practice, things like that. And I was very fortunate to be raised like that. So anytime something like that even came up minorly, I was like, nope, my dad's coming to get me, my mom's coming to get me.
Yep.
That's where it starts right
Okay.
there. And then, like I said, you move up to the civic level, to your elementary school, to your middle schools. Be involved. It doesn't take that much time, honestly. Go once a month to a meeting, go to a city hall meeting, see what bills are getting passed, audit the bills, what's in the bill, who's trying to sneak what in. And it only takes, especially in these smaller communities, it only takes a few parents to get loud to turn things around. Right. And people don't realize that.
Interesting. So. Cool. That's awesome. That's good advice. It's good advice even just for me as a parent too. Like, because I think it is hard being a parent. I think it is hard knowing when that time is, and knowing like when is, because, like even my kids are super young, but they're already getting to the point where they're like joking about each other's butts and whatever. Right. And you just kind of, as a parent, especially me, and knowing what I know about this and all these different terrible, evil things, I'm just like, oh, is it getting close? Like, is it here yet? Or is it time yet? But it's like, how do you, like, I know you probably can't answer this. I think it's more just as a parent, you need to have that intuition. But I would imagine that it's much sooner than it used to be.
So don't quote me, I could be wrong, but I am pretty sure I saw a stat a couple months ago saying that kids are now the average age of being exposed to pornography is somewhere around like 8 or 9.
Jeez.
I think even like when I grew up, it was 12. Yeah. I want to say 12 or 13.
It was after. It was at least.
But everyone has freaking the technology.
And it's crazy how easy it is.
Yeah. And it's everywhere. It pops up in ads.
Everywhere.
Like, it pops up on games.
Yes.
Like little games, just kids' games.
And that's a big one too. Just touch on that real quick, like these game chats. And I never grew up as a gamer, so I'm not super familiar with them. Yeah. But I've heard horror stories and I've looked into cases where these game chats, people are grooming kids in the game chats. So same thing, just educating your kids on the language. Someone seems too friendly, they are too friendly. Like they're, if it's not mom and dad, don't let them, ask you personal questions. Don't let them see certain parts of your body. Those sort of things. And as cheesy as that sounds, that does go a long way, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, man. Normally this would be the part where I say, where can people find you? But obviously we're not going to do that. So I just want to thank you for coming on, man. Thank you for being willing to, share your story, share your experience, and help illuminate this issue some more for people, because I think it's super, super important. So thanks for coming on, man.
Well, dude, I appreciate it. And speaking of humble people, Ian here, for everyone that doesn't know, Ian has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of his own dollars to travel and help us spread the word of this mission and go to events. And he sacrificed a lot. So we're very thankful for Official Patriot Gear and all you do to, help us and spread the word. So
it's my pleasure, man. Honestly, it's been awesome being involved. I'm just grateful you guys gave me a way to actually be involved and not just talk about it. So thanks, man. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, bro.
Thank you.